Dhamma greetings. My name is Rahula. I'm a student of Bhikkhu Candana, and I just wanted to share a thank you before watching, and just to let you know that Bhikkhu Candana is a wandering monk, and he basically depends totally on donations for food, shelter, transport, and medicine. So if you find this video beneficial and it's fruitful in your life, a dana or donation would be greatly, greatly appreciated. So enjoy.
This week, we continue the Sutta Explorations. And I wanted to have another sutta, another as in of a different flavor for us to go over today. Again, it's from the connected discourses from the Samyutta Nikaya. It's a vast ocean of suttas. And that's why many times I want to go back there, because there's so many snippets, many stories that we might have heard about, or incidents from different, perhaps Dhamma talks or references made from the exposure that we've been getting in our journey of the Dhamma, come from the connected discourses in many cases. But I decided to kind of make a different, it's a turn from what we normally talk about. But nevertheless, the Dhamma is there. Nevertheless, Lord Buddha is there. Nevertheless, the urgency is there, which is ultimately what matters. Life is there. And in this case, a person who is on the verge of dying, at least in his mind. It is about a very important character from Buddhist history, as we say, and the sasana, the Buddha sasanas, Lord Buddha's dispensations, part of that history. And the person being referenced to is another Sakyan, Buddha's own cousin, Mahānāma. He was also a royal. In fact, the burden of carrying the royalty of the Sakyans was left to him. So he had to bear that responsibility. And many of them, because, the same father would, be involved in. So there was a lot of stepbrothers, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. And Mahānāma's father happened to be also the father of Anuruddha, another very famous bhikkhu. In this case, Mahānāma was not a bhikkhu, but what had happened was, after Lord Buddha's awakening, after some time, he decided to go to Kapilavatthu, his kingdom, the Sakyan kingdom, from where he was, the Sakyans. So he goes there, and after he teaches the Dhamma, and people see what had happened to him, the quality, the character, the changes that had happened to him, people were moved deeply. And generosity started pouring in. People wanted to see him, invite him. That's when Lord Buddha's own father, King Suddhodana, had become a Sotapanna, a stream winner, from listening to the Dhamma being taught by his own son, Lord Buddha. And that's when we also see the young Rahula, Lord Buddha's own, from Siddhartha's life, son, he became a novice monk, where his mom, Queen Yasodhara, points to Lord Buddha as he is approaching the royal palace. She nudges her son. He says, "Hey, you see that monk over there, that bhikkhu?" He says, "Yeah, that's your father. Go ask for your inheritance from your daddy." Okay. So young Rahula rushes down the stairs, goes to him and pulls the robe of Lord Buddha and says, "Mom says I need to ask you for my inheritance." And Lord Buddha looks at him. He was a puny little young man. And he looks at Venerable Sariputta and says, you want my inheritance, huh?" Of course, I'm paraphrasing. He turns to Venerable Sariputta and says, "Ordain the kid. That's the inheritance, the Dhamma." So all these things were happening. And then you had families where the male son, the child, was going off and becoming ordained, becoming part of the Sangha. So there was, and they were becoming arahants so quickly. They were seeing these things happen. So Venerable Anuruddha is walking with his brother, Mahānāma, who was very much intent on becoming a bhikkhu. So what you had was basically many instances, many individuals who were trying to encourage each other to leave the household life and go and become ordained. Because you have to understand, this was not a usual scenario. Yes, the Indian culture has a lot of room for interest, inborn, innate, you can even say, drive. And this has been the case for eons. I'm currently translating a sutta from the Book of the Nines in the Anguttara Nikaya, where Lord Buddha points out a special quality of the people, what they call Jambudipa. Jambudipa is the Indian peninsula, what we understand as India today. And he says there's a special quality the population here have that is far superior to even the Tavatinsa gods, the gods of the 33. And one of the qualities is the natural inclination to look at the spiritual, be curious about it. So this was timely, this was opportune for these individuals to suddenly have this, and is one of them, the Sakyans. And they were very prideful people. And they see Lord Buddha. So Mahānāma is debating. And so he's walking with Anuruddha, Venerable Anuruddha, before he became venerable. And he's lost in his, enjoyments of life, princely life. But they had the ultimate in pleasure. So when these individuals walked away from lay life, they had already, in a sense, gone all the way as to how much kama means senses, sense pleasures, could give them. Kama raga, the passions for the senses. They had done it all, seen it all, tasted it all. So they have something that they're giving up, instead of someone who just is very much eager to enjoy sense pleasures, who goes and becomes a bhikkhu, let's say. So when they're giving up, they've really done it, seen it, experienced it, witnessed it, and they had their full, they're full of it, they're done, they're full of it, in a sense. So this is the key situation where two brothers are walking, and Mahānāma is pointing out, okay, he says, I'm going to become a bhikkhu. I'm very much adamant about that. And he says, I need you to become the king. Because it was all a matter of hierarchy. And because Siddhartha Gautama was no longer, so the role went to, he was the crown prince, so he's not taking it. So now his son is gone, Prince Rahula. So now they're looking around, okay, who's gonna rule? So Mahānāma is now thinking about it. Anuruddha is not. And he's walking around and he's showing him patches of land where rice fields, rice paddies are found. And he says, this is what happens. So Anuruddha is clueless about what it takes to be a householder, especially a ruler. What the farmers have to do, how many times they have to do this and that and this, and then what. So Anuruddha is paying attention. He says, okay, so this is done once, right? The farmer cultivates, the land, sows the seeds, and you wait, and then it grows, and you chop them down, and then you wait, and then he says, no, you do this every time when it's the season. And he says, what? This is continuous, perpetual? He says, yes. He says, you know what? You be the ruler. I'll go and join. Because everybody wanted to send at least one son to the Sangha to be ordained. So Mahānāma was saying, either you or me, one of us is going to go. So Anuruddha says, no, I'll go. You stay. I don't want to deal with this. Lay life responsibilities. I want to be done. And that tells you something about how he was already fed up also with the tediousness of life, of you have to do this again and again and again, and next year you're going to do it again. That turns into disenchantment in time. The person asks questions. Is this what life is all about? Is this it? Which is very key to have the person make that switch, that shift in thinking, in priorities becoming different suddenly, overnight. So this is the backstory in a sense. And then you have Mahānāma becoming one of the major supporters, and he was known as the individual, he became the king, of course, for some time of the Sakyan families. He was a big supporter of the Sangha. He would go and ask the Buddha again and again if he could offer food, and a special kind of food. So he was known as the person, as the lay person, as the upasaka. Upasaka is a Buddhist male lay follower or disciple who was known for offering special types of alms food that incorporated a few types of medicinal properties. So he would make it his mission to make sure that every bhikkhu was going to get a meal that had certain medicinal qualities within it. So it was food, it was highly nutritious, but at the same time, it was tasty, but also medicinal. So Lord Buddha even mentions him in the Book of the Ones, in the Anguttara Nikaya, where he's delineating, highlighting as who is the foremost in this, and Mahānāma is the foremost in the special kind of alms food he offered. So here we have Mahānāma, and he's having some issues, and Lord Buddha is going to come to the rescue and alleviating some of his concerns. This is happening later in his life, but so I wanted to give you a background story as to who this person Mahānāma is. That way you can relate, because suttas are meant to be related. They are relatable. True Dhamma are, all the sections of the Dhamma are relatable if we know how to approach them. Otherwise, they're not part of the Dhamma. They've just been added later on. So again, this is from the Connected Discourses. which is the Samyutta Nikaya. It is from the Mahavagga Samyutta, the great discourses, connected discourses to the great section, from the Sotapatti Samyutta, which means it's the sub-connected discourses, subgrouping of the connected discourses that is dedicated to those who have attained or about to attain Sotapatti. Sotapatti is a stream winner. Stream winner. The one who has entered the stream. That's it. They're locked on. You know, at the most, if they're exceedingly lazy, it will take them 7 more lives to attain arahantship. So this comes from that connected discourses section of this discourses. And then the subgrouping of that is Saranani Vagga, the group of dedicated to Saranani or Sarakani, which was also an interesting story, a layperson. He's also a Sotapanna, if I'm not mistaken. Anyhow, and then you have the sutta name, Paṭhama Mahānāma Sutta, Discourse to Mahānāma, Part 1. This sutta number is SN, which is Samyutta Nikaya, 55.21. Paṭhama means Part 1, Mahānāma Sutta, the discourse dedicated to Mahānāma. All right, here we go. This is what I personally heard. At one time, the Blessed One was staying at the Nigrodha monastery in the royal city of Kapilavatthu, among the Sakyans. That is where he was from, originally, Lord Buddha. Then Mahānāma, the Sakyan, came and approached the Blessed One. And having paid homage to him, he sat down to one side and said to the Blessed One, "Here, Bhante, we find our city of Kapilavatthu being prosperous, rich, well-stocked, and successful, populated by so many people, affluent and full of resources, with many wide streets, avenues, along with narrow, dead-end streets. Now, often, when the day is over and night is approaching, after I take my leave here from the Sangha, after I paid homage to the Blessed One or a respectable bhikkhu I may be visiting, I go back and re-enter the Kapilavatthu city gate." One of the reasons why we see these different monasteries, like in this case, Nigrodha monastery, in the case of Kapilavatthu, or in the case of Savatthi, you have the Anathapindika monastery, or Pubbarama, which is on the eastern side of Savatthi, which was constructed by Lady Visakha, the other wealthy billionaire of Savatthi. And then you have in Uruvela, or in Rajgir, you have the one that King Bimbisara made, the monastery. Why these monasteries? Well, because these were major cities in which very wealthy, or in this case, kings used to live. What they wanted to do was, they didn't want to have to travel long distances to go and see Lord Buddha. It was a blessing for them to have an arahant, let alone the Buddha himself. So when he came by or passed by their towns or cities or kingdoms or their countries, they wanted to make sure they'd done everything possible to make him want to stay there long. That was a blessing to their kingdom, but also they would just eat, like in the case of King Pasenadi, he would have his lunch, he would get in his chariot all the way to the forest where the monastery was, and this is the Kosalan country, and he would go and sit down and have a chat with Lord Buddha. He would just sit there for a Dhamma talk. Lord Buddha wasn't going to come all the time, but they could go because it's closer. So this was very convenient for them. So Mahānāma, every time Lord Buddha would come and show up in Kapilavatthu and stay in Nigrodha's monastery, he would sneak out after his duties were done, kingly, he was a Maharaja. afterwards, he would go straight to the monastery and they would spend hours. They would sit, meditate, they would talk with the bhikkhus, they would specially ask questions of Lord Buddha. And thankfully, because of these encounters, we have countless suttas and discourses because of these interactions. Now, in those days, in India, there was the palace, but there was also the city gates, which, encapsulates the palace, of course, the castle, but sometimes it's huge. You still have these walls, and especially if you go to places like North Jaipur and places like that, you still have some forts. They're not as old as the time of Lord Buddha, but they're still pretty old. And you see these gates, these huge doors, whatever's left of them. And then you have to, with a car, you can go up, and then you have to pull over, park the car, and then walk the rest of the way in. And it's always a climb. Now, the outer gates of the city, the gates themselves would be locked after a certain time. So there would be curfew, even for the king. So he had to make sure he gets there on time. Obviously, for the king, they would let him in. But if you're a common person, unless you know someone at the gate, the guard, you're going to be stuck outside for the night. So, and they didn't have like street lights, things like that in those days. So they had to make sure they get there. Either they would have to have a lamp or something, a lantern. So anyhow, I would like you to get the image of when Mahānāma, the Sakyan, is saying, our city's streets are many, this and that, and it's rich, it's affluent, and it has wide streets, narrow streets, and dead-end streets. Modern day cul-de-sac, So it's like a dead end in a sense. You have to make a roundabout to come out of there. Interesting, they had those, and it's being mentioned here. So this is something I wanted to mention because it's important as to connect with what is coming next in what Mahānāma says. Now, along the way, however, I often encounter a stray elephant, a horse, a chariot being driven fast, or a cart, or a person on foot. So imagine you're walking at night and you're seeing a huge wall passing in front of you, an elephant. It's not going to always have a mahout. And what if it's blocking the way? You can't just force your way. It might just, hit you with its trunk, and good luck surviving that. Or you might find tigers. Or, a fast-moving chariot trying to make it to the city before the curfew time might hit you. So you have to have all your senses, open, alert. I remember when I was in Savatthi, I got up early in the morning to go at sunrise, actually before sunrise, to go to Anathapindika's monastery when I was there and I was doing my pilgrimage. And as I got nearer to the main entrance of Jeta's Park, all of a sudden I see these monkeys. And you have to be very careful. You have to have a stick with you. Otherwise, they can attack, because they're not attacking you. They're attacking you because they're thinking you have food and you're not giving it to them. They want food. So some of them tried to approach me, and and then I convinced them to do otherwise, go away. So it was interesting. You're seeing stray dogs, cows sometimes. So this is happening now in the 21st century. Imagine in those days. So he's talking about nighttime though. Anyhow, so these are some of the things he witnesses. And this is important, what's coming next. In those moments, Bhante, I find myself having lost my mindfulness, having forgotten about the Blessed One. the Dhamma and the Sangha, as I get caught up in the thought, what if something happens as I'm walking back home and I were to die right now? What would happen to me? Where would I be reborn in my next life? I wish everyone has these thoughts at least once a week. It's important. If you're a practitioner, this needs to be in your mind. Playing like these questions, not to threaten or terrorize you or try to create panic. No, but create urgency. There's a huge difference between the two. So he's coming from a very fragile, concerned place. And this happens to be Maharaja, the king. So he's concerned, where will I end up? And Lord Buddha's response is so comforting. He says, do not be afraid, Mahānāma. You have nothing to fear at all, Mahānāma. For when the time comes for you to die, your death will be a good death and not a bad one. You see why I chose this sutta? Because this, I think, is something that absolutely 100% is relatable with everyone. Because it's guaranteed that we all will die. So sooner or later, we're going to have to ask, okay, the jig is up. Time to go. Where, though? Where will I land? How will it be? What does all of this thing called my life and the choices I've made, how does it play along? How does it play into what's coming next in my life? This is a legitimate question to be asking yourself. Everything we do, especially in this Dhamma and Vinaya of Lord Buddha's Sasana, must point us in that direction of asking ourselves, what am I doing? It's extremely important for us to look at our life in the Dhamma as a form of practice. This is not just, kind of feeding your curiosity. No. This is existential. You can't get more existential than this. The man is now concerned about his death. Where am I going to go? And you can tell he's afraid. That's why Lord Buddha is saying, don't be afraid, Mahānāma. Bhaya is fear. So he says, don't be afraid, Mahānāma. Now, why? You need to validate that. Not because, of course, it's coming from the Buddha, fine, you believe him, you have trust in him, but why? This is important. And this is another reason why I wanted us to go over this sutta, so that you look for yourself in these lines, in these pages, in these experiences that Mahānāma is having. Imagine Mahānāma, Lord Buddha continues, there was someone who, for a long time now, had been living his life with a heart that is infused with strong faith, filled with the fragrance of virtue throughout, augmented by his constant quest to gain a better understanding of the Dhamma, open-handed in his generosity as he trains himself daily, while wisdom grows in his heart continuously. Did you see that? Did you hear that? Someone who, for a long time, has been living his life with strong faith. That is saddha. That's number one. In this path, we have to have faith. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. Why? You have other things to do. Some of you are way past your bedtime or too early. But you're here. listening, trying to get something out of this. So faith must be there, saddha. But he doesn't stop there. Then he says, the fragrance of virtue, sila, moral structure for you that you're establishing for yourself. Somebody who's living like that, he says. Understanding of the Dhamma. Even if the person is not a meditator per se, but they are struggling, they're trying to understand, to develop wisdom. Lord Buddha continues, now because his physical body is made up of the 4 primary elements, the product of his mother and father, sperm and an egg, nourished and sustained by food and boiled rice, it always is subject to the fact of impermanence, to decaying and to weathering away, to breaking up and finally being destroyed. Because we are made up of these things, we're going to be disintegrated from these things. Because we're made up, we're built. Anything that is built is going to come apart. Anything that has a beginning will have its end, basically, right? But that does not constitute, that's not the whole picture, though. He's talking about anybody who's made up of a physical body. The body is going to break down. That's not the full story. And even though the time comes for the physical body to fall prey and be chewed upon and devoured by various birds like crows, vultures, or wild dogs and jackals, as well as many kinds of little animals like worms, still, however, the refined chitta of such a person rises higher and higher. Chitta is the heart. You're working on your heart. Sometimes it's also called the mind. It's not the physical heart organ, you know. Chitta is where the Dhamma reveals itself. The refined chitta of such a person rises higher and higher to even more sublime states as it steadily continues heading upstream, despite the fact that the body's broken down. So don't look at your gray hair and say, oh, I am the gray hair. Don't look at the wrinkled skin and say, I am the wrinkled skin. Don't look at a failed relationship and say, well, I have failed. Or the job that you're no longer at, say, oh, I have failed. No. These things came together because the conditions for such things were primed. They were ready for such things. But because it's all conditioned, conditions come apart. They're always coming together and dissolving. But that has nothing to do with the chitta. Meanwhile, you're using this body that comes together, falls apart, relationships, this, that. Don't confuse the two, Lord Buddha is saying, basically. Because in the midst of all this, the body getting sick, this, that, work on maintaining saddha, the faith in your chitta, virtue in your character, maintain panya, always. That's what he's doing whenever he comes to Lord to see and listen to Lord Buddha speaking the Dhamma. He's learning, and not just Lord Buddha, because you had also, it's a monastery, you had other bhikkhus living there. And sometimes he would get lucky and he would have either Venerable Sariputta or Venerable Ananda or even Venerable Mahamoggallana coming and staying, not always Lord Buddha. So he's learning from all these esteemed bhikkhus. So he's always gathering information and pondering. And remember, a few weeks ago, I was mentioning about those 5 ways that Lord Buddha talks about that a person can become awakened. One of them is through listening. Another one is by taking it in, recollecting, pondering, understanding after you've heard it. And Lord Buddha continues, it is just like someone were to drop a clay pot full of purified ghee. I love this image. Imagine a clay pot. as if someone were to drop a clay pot full of purified ghee or oil into a deep lake, whereby the jar of clay housing the ghee would crack and be shattered in the water as it sinks down to the bottom, the clay, because it's solid, right? But the purified ghee or oil would immediately start rising up to the surface as it steadily continues heading to the higher surface. What a simile. Have you ever tasted ghee, purified ghee? It's so aromatic, it's so fragrant. Try dropping it into water or any essential oil. Good luck trying to make it sink, especially when there's a clay involved, something solid that was housing it. So the body is saying, think of it as that clay pot that's cracked. Remember, there was a time where there was no clay pot. The potter built it. Because of anicca, impermanence, it will fall apart. So don't worry about the body saying as much as what you've been doing with it, meaning with your heart. And then he's now going to complete the comforting part. The compassionate teacher that he was comes through again. It is exactly like that, Mahānāma, when someone who for a long time now has been living his life with a heart that is infused with strong faith, filled with the fragrance of virtue throughout, augmented by his constant quest to gain a better understanding of the Dhamma, open-handed in his generosity. That's another thing. Generosity is key. This world is lacking these days. This very important quality, to be generous. We always equate it with something that it's like a business transaction or something. Generosity, when it's coming from the right place, it's life-changing, it's life-altering. It gives you joy, it's immediate. You don't have to wait for it. Just the thought of it, Lord Buddha mentions how it has several phases, generosity. If it's true generosity, he says the very moment that you've intended, you've decided in your mind, you haven't reached in your pocket yet, just the thought of it, yeah, I think I'm going to give. It's immediate joy creating for yourself. You get goosebumps all over. Now, the second portion of it is when you reach over, whether it's your pocket or whether it's in the case of the suttas, we see it a lot. They go and get the food ready. There, for hours it would take to prepare the food, this and that. Imagine for hours you're experiencing such a high of joy, piti on such a level. Every time you're visualizing, before you even offered the food, before you wrote that check, before you, whatever, did that thing, give from your own time and energy, because that's also generosity. It's not just financial. And then there is the, when you're handing it over, the thing, the food, this, that, when you see them receiving it, that is going to take the joy to another level. But then there's the last phase of it, which is not last. This is overarching in a sense. Because after the fact of having given, having been generous, every time you think of it, it reignites the heart to re-experience that joy unfailingly. And you get, again, the goose flesh again, every time you are transported. Wow. It is absolutely spiritual, true generosity. Now, Mahānāma was someone who had lived such a life. So Lord Buddha is pointing the finger back to Mahānāma and says, please do not neglect what you have lived by, how you have lived. Because Lord Buddha is by using these words, he mentions faith, he mentions sila, and now he's mentioning his dana as he trains himself daily, while wisdom grows in his heart continuously. Panya also. So he's saying, Mahānāma, you got all these bases covered. So the ghee has nowhere other than up to go to, upstream. So don't worry about going downstream, because that is a fear that many people have. So I wanted to discuss this sutta, bring it up today, because every one of us at one point or another are having this or going to have some worries that Mahānāma is having here in this discourse, sharing it with Lord Buddha. You can imagine how much he thought about it before saying it, because he's saying, I am vulnerable, Bhante. Bhante, I'm afraid. And as I said, Sakyans were very prideful people. And he's a king on top of that. And he's saying, I'm afraid. Where am I going to end up, Bhante? Am I going to end up like these elephants? Or these dogs? Or these monkeys? Are they going to, I know they're going to burn me. And whatever's left of me, probably some animals are going to come chew me up. But where am I going to be ending up, Bhante? I'm afraid, he's saying. That's why Lord Buddha is saying, no, no, no. Your life that you've dedicated to the practice changes you. You're no longer the clay pot. So this is also an invitation to you, each of you, to ask yourselves this question. Have you been practicing enough so that you have faith in your heart? How about your generosity? How about your virtue? Is it just lip service that you give yourself when you're taking the 5 precepts in the morning? Is it just lip service? You're just going through routines? Is it just some traditional thing, cultural thing? Or is there some, you're putting your heart into it? You're pausing when that moment comes, so-called opportunity comes for you to break a sila precept. Are you taking a moment to say, well, I can't do that? I used to. If it were the other person, the other me from a past, might have, but I can't do that. And that is huge. You're transforming yourself. This is alchemy. You're doing it. You're the alchemist. You're transforming yourself with your practice. So it's not a matter of wishful thinking when that moment comes. Yeah. May I not end up like a dog in my next life? May I not end up being a flea on a dog? No, it's not a guesswork. It's not a like gambling. No. It's ridiculous to think like that. Why? What makes me say that? What guarantees do I have? Well, it's very simple. Am I keeping sila? Do I have faith? Do I have faith? Do I have confidence in the teaching, in the teacher, Lord Buddha, in the Dhamma, in the Sangha? That's why I want to present to you as often as I can these giants. Venerable Sariputta, Venerable Mahamoggallana, Kumara Kassapa, Bahya, all these names, they're not just names, they were real like you and I. They had a flesh and bone. They had to work through the same difficulties that you and I are working. And they attained the highest while being in the physical body just like you and I. Now, Lord Buddha continues, although his physical body that is made up of the 4 primary elements, the product of his mother and father, nourished and sustained by food and boiled rice, is subject to the fact of impermanence, to decaying and to weathering away. to breaking up and finally being destroyed. And even though when the time comes, his physical body will fall prey and be chewed upon and devoured by various birds like crows, vultures, or wild dogs and jackals, as well as many kinds of little animals like worms, nevertheless, the refined chitta of such a person will rise higher and higher to even more sublime states, as it will steadily continue heading upstream. Rest assured, Mahānāma, your heart has, for a long time indeed, been infused with strong faith, filled with the fragrance of virtue throughout, augmented by your constant quest to gain a better understanding of the Dhamma, remaining open-handed in generosity as you have been training yourself daily, while wisdom continues to grow in your heart. So this is coming, the validation is coming straight from the mouth, from the lips of Lord Buddha himself. Do not be afraid, Mahānāma. You have nothing to fear at all, Mahānāma. For when the time comes for you to die, your death will be a good death and not a bad one. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Mahānāma was also a Sotapanna. That's why you find his discourse within the grouping, as I was mentioning, the Sotapatti Sangyutta. He was a Sotapanna, but even a Sotapanna is going to have these concerns because he's not an Arahant yet. And so long as we're not Arahants yet, we will have some doubts here and there. Lord Buddha mentions how it takes us all the way to Arahantship, and then it all falls away. The absolute 100% certainty happens then. But you already have seen the Dhamma. Dhamma Chakku, you have seen. The eye of Dhamma you have. I mentioned this before, but I'll go over it again. There's many images or similes that were presented for what is this Dhamma Chakku, the eye of Dhamma, when a person is experiencing Nibbana, the first stage, Sotapatti, the stream winner, stream enterer, the guarantee that you have, whereby you can never ever look at any other teaching again. You are never attracted to go and try out something else, some other teaching. Yeah, maybe I'll go. That will never happen to you. If it does, you're not a Sotapanna, even though some people might have told you that you are. Sorry, you're not. Another thing that happens is you are unable to break Sila. Even if they force you, you cannot break Sila. And if so happens that you do break it, you immediately have to, it eats you up to keep it hidden. You will come out and spill it. The beans, as they say, spill the beans. You have to say it, speak it out loud. Let others know that I did this, okay? Because you've changed. Now, the image that I wanted to mention for Sotapanna is that we get traditionally mentioned, at least in some commentaries, is like a traveler who's been told about this mountain, this mythical mountain. Something happens in their heart that they say, I want to go and find out. I want to see the mountain. I want to be on the mountaintop. I want to be there. Experience the mountain. And people laugh at them. But the person is following their heart. They're going up. So they start climbing. Treacherous land, this and that. But if there comes a time where there is an opening between the cliffs and the mist, for a split second, just a tiny little bit of time, a millisecond, it opens up. And through all that, they see the mountain. It's life-changing for the person. They have seen the mountain and they know, they rub their eyes to make sure they're seeing it. They see it, it's there, it's not illusion. the person can never go back to the way they were before. It changes the person, transforms the person. And now they have even more of an energy to push forward. They have more persistence, they have more resolve, they have more heedfulness, adhitthana, they have diligence to push through and to bear even more hardship than before. Because now, even if you come and tell them this is not Dhamma, this is not Dhamma, they will quietly just walk away, smile and walk, because they know in their hearts what is Dhamma, what is not, because they have seen. Chakku means eye. They have seen the Dhamma, Dhamma Chakku. No one can convince them otherwise. That energy, that intensity is the thing which gives them even more faith and confidence, which, by the way, also drives them, infuses their hearts with even more sila, virtue. That's why they are the embodiment of virtue. That's why they're called noble disciples, by the way. A person who practices sila and just does go through the motions does not necessarily mean we're talking about a noble disciple, if the heart is not in it and for the right reasons. They become sila. Such a person becomes sila. So here was Mahānāma, who was that. He was a Sotapanna. But he was nearing that moment of death. Now remember, death, which ironically is also the name that we find in Pali, Marana Sati, we covered the other day, right? Marana means death. Do you know where also we find those letters? M-A-R-A, Mara, the evil one, the mischievous one. In some cases, he's also called the king of death. Not because he is, he's somewhere, waiting for you at the end of life, somewhere in hell or somewhere. No, but death in the form of Mara comes in and pollutes the heart, the mind, with doubts, with fear, with panic, with uncertainties. Not just at the moment of death, of course. When you're about to make a very difficult or important decision in your life. When you're, or something just as mundane sounding as sitting to meditate, even though I don't call that mundane, consider that mundane. When you tell yourself, convince yourself to get up and walk away from your sit, or start doubting what you're reading in the suttas. Nah, that can't happen. Just cultural mumbo jumbo. Nah, sure, whatever. No. Something is dying. It's death. When we have fear. They've proven this in many scientific experiments. But we don't have to trust experiments. You can just look at your life. The moment you have fear, you are depriving yourself of life. Plain and simple. When you're standing by the pool and everything in your cells, in your bones is saying, jump, jump. It's beautiful weather, perfect temperature, and it's safe. I can swim. I don't know. What's happening? Fear. Oh, what are they going to say? People are going to watch. It could be sending an email to someone that you know must be sent, but you're afraid. After you've done your pros and cons, you looked at all the points and you see, no, this has to be done for the better situation for everyone involved, especially me. So why shouldn't I? Yeah, but that yeah, but is a killer. It's the opposite of, it's going to be all right. It's okay. The weather is perfect for the pool. I'm wearing the right gear. What's going to happen? The water molecules are going to push me up, back up. I'm not going to drown. I know how to swim. Okay. Well, so we have all kinds of fears that we have to struggle through. But the biggest one, of course, is the one that has to do with our mortality. Of course, everyone's found or is looking for some way, and usually the wrong methods of extending their stay on this planet, or giving themselves the illusion, or talking about, oh, after I die, I'm going to go and be with my mom, or with these people are waiting for me. There's several suttas, by the way, where we have similar incidents where very important individuals from the sasana history are on their deathbed. One of them is actually, his name came up a few times today, Anathapindika, when he was about to die. The great generous billionaire who built Savathi's Anathapindika's monastery. A few times he actually calls Venerable Ananda, another time Venerable Sariputta go, and they just like Lord Buddha is doing here with Mahānāma, they do the same with Anathapindika. And one time it happens with Chitta, the householder, who was an anagami. He was not just a sotapanna, he was not a once returner, but he was an anagami. And he was a teacher of bhikkhus as a layman. Okay? He was a businessman. And he's about to die. His kids walk in and he's talking. He's giving a Dhamma discourse as he's dying, but they look around, nobody's there. So the kids, the grandkids, look at him as like, oh, he's gone. He's delusional. He's hallucinating. And they say, don't worry, you need to control yourself. You know, it's okay. And he's like, are you guys, what's wrong with you? I'm fine. Don't worry. My mind is right. I'm actually talking with the devas who have come to convince me so that I wish that I make the wish so that I end up being a Chakravartin. Chakravartin is a world ruler. You have a Buddha, and the equivalent of that would be a world ruler. That was the two possibilities that the early astrologers had predicted for Siddhartha Gautama, if you recall, when his father showed the baby, Siddhartha, when he was an infant baby, to these seers. And they said he has one of two options. So in this case, the devas were trying to convince Chitta, because he was far more advanced than these devas in his ability, in his awakening. So he was teaching them that all things are impermanent. What are you guys talking about? You as devas will fall one day. So that moment of death need not be a moment of terror. It's a moment of transformation. But you don't need to wait for that moment to come. That's what I'm trying to say. That's what these suttas are trying to say. You have a life now. So some thoughts I wanted to share with you. So I hope this has been encouraging and you find use or usefulness from it. And yeah. So Are there any questions or thoughts? Mhm. Okay. As you know, this was not one of those longer suttas, which is also a good thing. For some of you, were actually your time zone is totally off, and you're really using your adhitthana to be here with us. So it's very good for your practice. So let us transfer some merits. Akasatha chabumata devanagamahiddhika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu lokasasanam. Akasatha chabumata devanagamahiddhika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu desanam. Akasatha chabumata devanagamahiddhika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu mam paranti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Please remember, the greatest protection you will ever get is through the type of life you're living. And the Dhamma provides you with the best tools ever. It provides us with the best protection ever. No relationship could give you that. No person in your life whom you consider absolutely important, irreplaceable, etc., could provide you with that. No alarm system could provide you with that. No bodyguard could provide you with that. No special skill sets, diplomatic or otherwise, could provide you with that. No amount of zeros in your bank account could provide you with that kind of safety, security. Especially when that moment comes, and you have a lot of people who have gone before us. You have many individuals that history remembers with misnomers like Alexander the Great, Hannibal, or I don't know, Julius Caesar or Cleopatra. People who had zero virtue. Zero. Can you be compared to either of those? That history flaunts them about in their pages. Virtue is number one. Please don't forget that. And that also really plays well with your own associates in your life, your companions in your life. The people we associate with must enhance the quality of our virtue, the quality of your chitta, if you will. Their virtue is extremely important. If they have a lousy, non-existent virtue, what is that going to do to yours? They need to be at least at the same level as you in their dedication to living a virtuous life, or higher or better than yourself. That's how you're going to improve. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck. Mahānāma was surrounded by individuals. All his brothers and cousins ended up being bhikkhus. Many of them became arahants, including his sisters-in-law and Queen Mahapajapati. Earlier I mentioned the wife of Siddhartha Gautama. No one mentions her, but guess what? Princess Yashodhara, Prince Rahula's mother, Siddhartha's wife, became an arahant. They did it. Why can't we? Why wouldn't we? Why shouldn't we? All we need is the same level of faith, same level of dedication to virtue, same level of dedication to understanding and making the most of this life that I'm living. And you do that, don't worry. Mara or no Mara. Can't hold, can't have a chance against that. When you have saddha, faith, when you have faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, when you have generosity, you're untouchable. But you don't have to take my word for it, or even Lord Buddha's word for it. Each of these will give you a sense of appeasement in your heart. And that's why the Dhamma is sanditthiko, it's immediately effective. You see it, you taste it right now. Hence, my mention of the goose flesh or the goosebumps. It's a very good litmus test, if you ask me. When you're giving away, when you're having a moment of sati, when you're having a moment of virtue, it's like you're feeling good. Your mind will remember that. Your heart will remember that when that moment comes, when you're exiting. That's why you will be only like the ghee, not the clay. Like the ghee that goes up, like the bubbles of oxygen to the surface as the clay goes down. The body, we drop the body. Anyhow, be well. May the Triple Gems blessings be with you all and your loved ones. May all your difficulties and challenges be brushed away. Thanks to your sati and your adherence to sila and your faith in the Triple Gem. Till next time, be well. Sukhi Hotu.